Hi everyone, my name is Talia. Welcome to HustleSZN, and in today's video I'm going to do a condensed version of my entire 2019 wrap up. I am so excited to be doing this video. Last year I wasn't really able to because I've never tracked my reading and I was only on, I'd only started making videos for about 6 months. So this is my first official full year. If anyone ever watched Much Music growing up, this is like the equivalent of the holiday wrap, which was maybe my favorite thing to watch aside from the Disney Christmas parade around this time of year. Unfortunately, I don't have a calculator with me, but I can do some very basic stats for you, and then I'll quickly do my most surprising reads, my most disappointing reads, and maybe my favorite reads of the year. And then I'll probably at the end just quickly talk about my reading plans for 2020. So let's just get started. It's going to be a bit of a chatty video. So first things first, let me open up Goodreads here. I'm happy to say that I passed my challenge. I wanted to read 50 books this year and I've currently read 53, so today as I'm filming, it's the 22nd. I'm hopeful for another 2 to 3 at least. I recently got a Switch and that has taken up a lot of my time. Okay, so I read 53 books, 2 of which were nonfiction. Of those 2, one was a poetry collection and the other was a collection of small essays. 6 books were graphic novels or manga. 4 books were middle grade if you include Harry Potter 1 and 2. I guess if you include 3, then 5, but otherwise the only middle grade series I read was Keeper of the Lost Cities. I read 7 adult fiction books. I think at least 3 of them were fantasy, so that's great. And then 2 were just regular adult fiction, and 1 was a romance novel. And then the bulk of my reading, 30 books, was YA. Of those 30 books, 18 were contemporaries, and then what does that make? 12 of them were fantasy. What else do we want to know? So of my 53 books, 31 were by white authors, which, damn, that was a lot more than I expected. I really thought I went out of my way to read POC authors. I at least thought I'd be half-half, but I feel especially because of the graphic novels that I read, and then once I started a series, and I also felt I will turn to white authors when I'm looking for something a bit more that I can kind of just binge read, Keeper of the Lost Cities, for example, my Harry Potter reread, those were more just comfort reads. So for queer versus non-queer authors, I read at least 4 books where I know that the authors are queer, but then I read definitely a few more where there were queer characters involved or the main character was queer. So yeah, so that one could probably use some work. I don't know if any of these authors have any forms of disability or anything like that, you know what I mean? The other thing I was gonna say is overall this year I tried to step out of my comfort zone quite a bit. In part, I think that was genuinely driven by the fact that I was trying to read POC authors, and I found more POC authors in contemporary than I did in fantasy. And even though fantasy is the genre that I like more, in order to support more POC authors, I was reading this other genre that I don't really care about. That being said, I've grown to appreciate contemporary this year. Definitely, that's probably one of my biggest changes in reading. I've always read a bit of contemporary, but not as much as I did this year. So that was something. I think the fact that I was trying to read adult fantasy also skewed my numbers towards more white authors in a way. Actually, you know what? I did okay on fantasy because I read Tasha Suri and then I also read N.K. Jemisin. At the end of the day, N.K. Jemisin was just way too smart for me and her book was so complicated. So even though it was amazing, I ended up wanting to continue Brandon Sanderson's work because it just, his books are written for dummies in the best way, you know what I mean? So that was so much easier to follow, although I do want to continue reading N.K. Jemisin and I do support her for the queen that she is. I just her books are so hard. Also this year, I took suggestions from friends because this year I felt more than any other years I had a lot of friends who were really into reading as well, and more specifically wanting to discuss the books they read and whatnot. Mistborn, for example, was one that my friend had told me to read. Brother, and then If We Were Villains, Andrew had told me to read. I unfortunately did not read Zoe's book If the Crawdaddies Sing or something like that. Crawdad's Song? Something. Crawdad's Song. But some of my other friends as well for my book club. I branched out and read a few different things for that. So overall, I definitely had a lot less fantasy than I normally would, but that being said, I'm pretty sure this year I had more POC and queer authors than I did in the past. So I'm still making gains. I just have a while to go, you know? Let's quickly do the most surprising reads of the year. I always think that's more exciting than the most disappointing. But the first surprising read of the year, for many reasons, was Love from A to Z by S.K. Ali. First of all, the fact that I got approved for an ARC on NetGalley, which is the only ARC I've ever been approved for. I haven't applied since then, but just the fact that I got an ARC and then I read it, and then not only did I read this ARC, but it was literally like my favorite book of the year. It was just, I don't know, I think that's kind of crazy. I did not expect to like this book as much as I did. I was kind of going through a rough time when I picked up this book, and it destroyed me, and I didn't expect that, and I loved it so much, and I've since recommended it to so many people, and they've all loved it. And then I found out the author's Canadian, and I was so surprised because, like I said, I'm not really into contemporary, I'm not really into religious things. Like, there's so many reasons that I should not like this book, and yet I read it, and it's just so well done. I love this book so much. I don't usually like sickness and disease represented in stories either, for lots of reasons, but this one was so tastefully done and I didn't mind it at all. My next surprising read was probably Letters to the Lost by Bridget Kemmerer. I had read this book because I was reading Yasmin the Reader's favorite books, and since I made that video, she's actually taken that video down because she like revamped her whole channel. But anyways, I was blown away by how much a contemporary could make me feel. Like, the reason I've always liked fantasy is because I always thought, oh, fantasy, like, the stakes are so high, it's so believable. I love how, like, everything is so dramatic, and, you know, the world is ending, so you're allowed to feel this upset and guilty or whatever it is. And in contemporaries, I always felt like they're kind of soft in comparison because it's just like I always felt like people are too emotional. Anyways, for some reason this year that changed a little bit, but I read Letters to the Lost, and it's about two people who have lost their parents, and they start like talking to each other via these random letters that they leave in the graveyard, which like is a mood in and of itself, that premise. So I read it, and it was just, I can't, like, I'm pretty sure I hadn't stayed up until 4 a.m. reading in such a long time. Like, that is not an adult thing to do, and your girl did that. I was up until like 4:30, and the amount of times that this book made me cry was ridiculous. I think I said in my video, objectively there are flaws with this book and not everyone will like it, but if you happen to like it, I think you will be obsessed with it, you know? So it's one of those books. And since then I've read more Bridget Kemmerer, and it's safe to say that her contemporaries, I think all of them are that gripping and that great. So I'm still working my way through her backlisted stuff. It was just a phenomenal book, and I love the way she describes and shows like grief and sadness and just... Okay, my next surprising read, it's Getting Scott in Here, by Suzanne, I hope this is how you pronounce it, but by Suzanne Enoch. So I have a book club that I do with my friends, and of the three of us, one of us really only reads adult romance, and she always gets so nervous picking a book because she knows it's one of my least favorite genres. But anyways, that being said, we chose this book because it had a funny pun as a title, and we thought it'd be really bad. And actually, strangely, I think the other two did not enjoy this book that much. I read it, and I was very surprised at how much I liked it. Again, it's not, objectively, there are flaws with this book. Like, it's not a great 5-star read all around, but I flew through this book. Like, it was so interesting and like gripping. You know how sometimes you just get obsessed with these romance novels and you just need to know what happens next? It was one of those for me. I read this book in like under 2 days. It was great, and surprisingly, like, I feel like all people my age have already gone through their Highlander phase because Outlander was so big back in the day. I had tried to read the first Outlander book, so as I was saying before my battery died, I'm not gonna lie, like, Outlander is way better done than this book series. So I didn't go and read Outlander, but I did like binge watch the entire first season of the show. That was it. Like, I just had this brief like couple weeks obsession, and then it petered out, so I guess that was surprising. Like, I didn't expect to then go watch the whole show, you know? And then my last couple surprises, honestly, I guess for what it's worth, I should say that Make Your Bed by William McRaven was kind of a surprise in that, like I said, I don't read nonfiction. I randomly saw this on like the coffee table at my friend's house, and it's a very short book, and I read half of it like within an hour, and then we had to leave to go to a party, so I couldn't finish it. But then I downloaded it from the library. I was just surprised at how much I liked it, for many reasons. Like it's by somebody from the military in America. I think he's a Navy SEAL from America. So like there's a lot of patriotism in the book. There's a lot of, not romanticizing, but obviously like a very biased point of view of what the military does. I can't say that like I loved those aspects of it, but I was surprised at how much I liked just generally the advice that's given. I think there are flaws with the book, and it doesn't give you like a whole picture of a lot of the wars and stuff that America was involved in that kind of come up throughout the book. But if you kind of ignore that part of the book, the actual advice was pretty interesting, and a lot of it, like I took pictures of some quotes that I really liked, and I did think that some of it was fairly inspirational, so I liked it. I haven't yet seen the YouTube video of his speech, but at some point I might watch that just to get a better sense of the guy's character. And then my final surprise of the year was probably Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. This was a book that I had been avoiding for quite some time. So everybody on the YA section of BookTube says that it's a really good beginner fantasy book, in that it's not too high fantasy, even though it is high fantasy, and also that Brandon Sanderson in general, like, he writes some pretty solid books. I, for many reasons, did not think I would like this book. For one, everything that I've heard about Brandon Sanderson makes it seem like he is really, really good at the genre, but he's also very vanilla in that he's not trying to create anything new in the realm of fantasy. He's just doing what he knows works, but doing it really, really well. But I just felt like I personally would not necessarily like that type of book, and I was very surprised. Because in some ways it was what I expected, in that there's like this one female character, the rest of them are guys, and it's very much like everyone's just like white males walking around doing their thing. There's no real diversity in the cast. There's no great female role models. Like, it feels like your very bland Marvel movie. Maybe there's this one girl, badass, but really for the most part it's just like a bunch of guys doing things together. That being said, the few things that I did really like about this book was, yeah, it's written at the same level of YA, so it is very easy to get into and very easy to understand. Like, it wasn't complicated. But B, I think despite me recognizing that like there were parts of this book that I didn't necessarily love, I don't know what it is, but you get sucked into it, and like without really realizing it. Sometimes I felt like I didn't love it, but then as soon as I put it down, all I wanted to do was continue reading it. So obviously it had some kind of hold on me, and I wasn't expecting that at all, and I wasn't expecting to be so excited to go read the second one. Yeah, like to the point where I don't even really want to start other fantasy series right now, because I really want to finish this one while my head is in that world. The last thing I expected was to like another white man bland fantasy thing, which sounds shady, but like it is what it is. That's literally why I read N.K. Jemisin first, and why I read Tasha Suri first, because I thought I would prefer, well, N.K. Jemison's not underrated, but Tasha Suri probably. So as I said before, I do think N.K. Jemisin still slays. I just think she slays too hard to the point where I can't keep up, you know? So those were my biggest surprises of 2019. In terms of biggest disappointments, I really only have two. The first one was Radio Silence by Alice Oseman. I have an entire video where I talk about how much I disliked that book, so I'll link that somewhere if you want to go watch it. I expected to like it because, not because of the hype necessarily, but more so because it was kind of branded as being similar to Eliza and Her Monsters, which I absolutely loved. And then the other one, Brother by Anya Alborn. So for this one, me and Andrew plan to do like a scary book buddy read over October. In general, I don't like horror to begin with, and I knew that. But that being said, like, we actually put some research into this and tried to pick a book that we thought we'd both like. And this one seemed a bit more thrillery as opposed to horror, so I thought I would like it. It was probably one of, I hesitate to say worst, because it definitely is a piece of art. So I don't want to say it's the worst book. I just did not enjoy it as much as I thought I would. A, I thought it was slow. B, I didn't love the characters. C, once you get to the end and you see all the payoff and everything is resolved, I don't know if that made me like it more or less. It kind of made me feel like, okay, I see what you did there, but also like that's so fucked up, you know? And I don't want to like applaud you for thinking of that, or applaud any of the fans for enjoying that. So it just left me feeling kind of of weird. That was an experience. I don't think that I will be reaching for horror or even thrillers really anytime soon, but who knows, maybe next October I will try again and find one that I like. Okay, so finally, my favorite books of the year, in no particular order. American Panda, I absolutely loved the representation in that one, and just like showing you the struggles, I guess, of a first gen kid, and the whole Asian culture piece I loved. It did read a little young for me personally, but I think like if I was in high school or if I recommended it to someone in like grade 6, 7, 8, like they would love the book. So I won't hold that against it. Love from A to Z, obviously, so that's 2. Letters to the Lost. Darius the Great is not okay. That's 4. Okay, I guess those are my 4 favorites. Honorable seconds, I also really liked Call It What You Want by Bridget Kemmerer. I really liked Permanent Record by Marie H.K. Choi. 2 current series that I'm reading, which is Mistborn and The Foxhole Court. As a series they would make it, but there's no individual books in them yet that I happen to love. But yeah, so those were my favorite books of the year. And I guess my most disappointing books are my least favorite, so that's already taken care of. And then finally, we can talk a bit about my reading plans for 2020. This is gonna be a bit of a like cop-out answer. I guess my biggest goal is that I don't want YouTube to ever really feel like a job. I want it to be fun. And I don't want reading to ever feel like a chore. I also want that to feel fun. So in order to keep those, I feel like I can't really put too much pressure on myself, and I can't really have that many goals in terms of, like, I don't want to dictate exactly how I'm going to read, what I'm going to read, and what readathons I'm going to participate in, and have these set TBRs or anything like that. Like, I really want it to be whatever I feel like doing, that's what I'm going to do. So in that sense, I don't have goals. I do have like long-standing goals of mine. So one of them, for example, is that I have been watching a lot of French TV lately. So I watched like The Hookup Plan, which I absolutely loved, and I also have been watching The Miraculous Ladybug, which I also really love. That's kind of got me thinking. I've always wanted to read a proper novel in French. I'm either considering reading a series I really like just in French, or the Passe Miroir series by I forget her name. I could be totally wrong, but I think her first name is Christine. I'm like so on that, because I also don't know, like, if I choose to read something in French, do I like make a little book of words I don't know? Like, am I trying to expand my vocabulary? Am I just trying to say that I can do it? Yeah, it's also weird because like the verb tense that they use in writing is only ever used in writing. Like, you wouldn't speak in that tense. So I almost like don't know how beneficial it would be, but it'd be cool to say I've done it. You feel? I struggle with audiobooks, but this past month I've been great with them, and audiobooks are so key to helping me read because it lets me do other stuff while I'm doing that. So usually like if I'm driving, I'll listen to an audiobook, but also like lately when I'm doing my laundry, or if I am cooking for the week, which is another thing that I hate doing, but when I combine listening to an audiobook and also cooking, sometimes it like motivates me to want to cook so I can read the book, you know? I guess those are my goals. Like, honestly, all my other goals in life for 2020 have nothing to do with reading. I just want to cook more, eat out less, maybe exercise more, and that's it. Basic things. So yeah, so those are my reading goals for 2020. I just want to have fun, and I don't really want to have it all dictated for me. I know that most people like that, and you probably feel more productive if you have all of that, but I think it's worth it to have some spontaneity in life. Okay, thank you so much for watching, and obviously let me know down below whatever you want me to know. Bye!